Good afternoon. It's a real pleasure to be here at my alma mater, school I attended 30 years ago. And at the time that I was attending, I don't think I could have believed that this moment would come that I'd be speaking on the same campus as a presidential candidate. In the early 70s, the school that I attended was on the other side of the campus, over at Speech Communications. And the degree that I have is in Speech and Communications, a bachelor's and master's degree from Case. I was involved in a program that some of you may be familiar with. It's a combined bachelor's and master's degree program. And so in some of those courses, you kind of get double stamped. And I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time on the campus, and also, as many people who are on this campus, also working at the same time. I was, at that time, a member of Cleveland City Council. Today I want to talk to you about a matter of great urgency and import. And I'd like to begin by saying that I hope that this afternoon's talk will be an opportunity to challenge some underlying assumptions that we have about the world. Because that's why I'm running for president. Kind of challenge the way that our leaders look at the world. Because we have to understand that the way we look at the world greatly informs the outcome. Is it possible that we're not victims of the world we see, but victims of the way we see the world? For example, some people believe that war is inevitable. There's a sense in which statecraft makes that a concession, the inevitability of war. I challenge that thinking. I don't believe that war is inevitable. And if we believe that war is inevitable, we in a sense, commit ourselves to a self-fulfilling prophecy of doom. There's no other way. Let's take an instructive, objective case of war and ask if it is inevitable. The war against Iraq. Was that an inevitable war? Could it have been avoided? Was it necessary to go to war against Iraq? And if we can make the case that it was not necessary to go to war against Iraq, then perhaps we can begin the journey into the causes of war, and how war comes about, and to ask the question as to whether or not we're at a time in human history where we can make that evolutionary leap to a condition where war is not only not inevitable, but where we can work to create a world where war becomes archaic. This is the nature of the discussion I'd like to have this afternoon. Let us begin by examining the instant case of Iraq, where at this very moment, the United States has over 130,000 troops in the country. Where at this very moment, the casualties continue to mount. Where at this very moment, the United States has a meter ticking that has $130 billion already committed to Iraq with no end in sight. The cycle of violence increases, the casualties of American troops and others serving continue, the loss of innocent life continues, and it's almost as if we are on track to keep committing this position in Iraq as though we're locked in. Indeed, there's a whole body of reports available that say, well, we're in for the long haul, we can't cut and run, we have to finish the job, and all of those shorthand notations which inevitably mean thousands of American casualties, hundreds of billions in American tax dollars resources, separating America from the world community, countless deaths of Iraqi civilians, and the tempo of violence increasing. So is war inevitable? Well, we went into Iraq, we were told that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Where are those weapons? That war was not inevitable. Not only was it not inevitable, but the administration misrepresented to the American people the reason to go to war against Iraq. They consciously endeavored to put the image of Iraq over the image of 9/11. It was a conscious effort. Look, I studied communications on this campus. I saw what they did. They took two different, unrelated facts, and they merged them so that most of the American people believed that Iraq had something to do with 9/11, which it did not. Did not. And why did the American people believe that? Because the administration deliberately advanced a whole plan to try to convince the American people that Iraq had something to do with 9/11 on the day of the first anniversary of 9/11. As a member of Congress standing at the site of the World Trade Center, the headlines that day were "The Nation Mourns First Anniversary" and "President Warns Iraq." They were drawing the two images together. Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11, with Al-Qaeda's role in 9/11, with the anthrax attack upon this country. What then of Secretary Powell's appearance before the United Nations with a simulated vial, presenting it to the United Nations while he's talking about Iraq? What was that about? There was a conscious effort to blur the facts before the public. Iraq had no ability nor any intention of attacking the United States. We got that from our own CIA. We know that Iraq was not trying to get uranium from Niger, that was a fabrication. And so one fabrication built upon another took us on the path of war. Was that war inevitable? Absolutely not. That war could have been avoided, except the administration determined for ideological and economic reasons that it would advance a war. The ideological adherents of a group called the Project for the New American Century, years before some of those individuals came to power under the Bush administration, were planning for the day to come when American power would be used and projected into that region for the purposes of dominating the government of Iraq. War was not necessary. What would have been the appropriate response of the United States to 9/11? Instead of launching attacks against nations that did not attack us, what else could we have done? 9/11, and all of us are fully aware of what a searing moment that was. Every person in this auditorium has an experience of how you connected to that day and will always remember where we were on that day. But where should have America been immediately after those events? We should have been connecting with the world community and organizing the world community to meet the challenge of terrorism, not preparing a go-it-alone approach, but in working with the world community at the moment that the world community was most receptive to the United States, when the heart of the world was open to America. Instead, we got a doctrine of unilateralism and preemption. At the moment that we needed most to achieve connectivity with the world community, we stepped back and stepped back again. This country has not achieved closure over the tragedy of 9/11. The lies and distortions which the American people have been told after 9/11 keep us from healing as a nation, keep us divided, have us searching down policies which lead us into moral cul-de-sacs. Where do we go? What do we do now? Is there a way out? Are we stuck? I propose that there is a plan, and a workable plan, which can enable the United States to reconnect with the world community, notwithstanding the grim nature of the moment. That plan involves stepping towards the United Nations with a whole new approach, eschewing policies of unilateralism and preemption, going to the United Nations and asking the United Nations to join us in a new approach that would enable the stabilization of Iraq. And the particulars, the specifics of that approach would involve the following. First, that the United States must go to the UN with a new resolution that would first and foremost turn over to the UN the handling of all the oil assets of Iraq without any privatization. The UN handle those assets on behalf of the Iraqi people while the Iraq government is in transition. Second, that the U.S. goes to the UN and turns over to the UN the handling of all contracts. No more Halliburton sweetheart deals, no more special contracts to no-bid contracts, no more contracts to administration contributors, no more inflated contracts and war profiteering, but turn the process over to the UN. Third, that the U.S. will give up any ambitions towards privatizing the Iraq economy. On September 19th, Paul Bremer issued a directive. And that directive set in motion a plan to privatize the 200 top activities in the Iraq economy. Neither this nation nor any other nation has the right to invade another country and to chop it up and sell the assets of that country to the highest bidder. We have no right to do that, and as a matter of fact, it is specifically a violation of both the Hague and the Geneva Conventions. We need to make a clear statement to the world community that we have no such ambitions. We need to make a clear statement to the world community by, number 4, giving to the United Nations the cause of developing a new government in Iraq. 2 days ago, the Grand Ayatollah Sistani of the Shiites rejected the administration's plan for governance in Iraq. It's very clear that the administration has made a commitment to the members of the Iraqi Governing Council for them to be held in place so that they can perform the dutiful service that is expected of them as the adherence to U.S. policy. That's not going to be acceptable to the nearly 15 million Shiites who follow the directives of their leaders, including the Grand Ayatollah Sistani. It's very clear the Iraqi people are waiting for a moment for this self-determination, and they're not going to accept something less than that, a system that would deprive them of the ability to be able to handle their own affairs. So by taking steps in a new direction to the UN, we can then achieve a kind of closure and enable the UN, through its member nations, to commit peacekeeping troops to Iraq to take the first steps towards stabilization. We must recognize the UN doesn't want to go in there right now and will not do it absent a new direction by the United States. And we must recognize that the presence of the United States in Iraq is a destabilizing, not a stabilizing force, that the violence will continue, and there's nothing that we can do to stop it by our presence. And so what I propose is a plan that would enable the United Nations to come in and for our troops to come home. That it is possible to end the occupation. But that occupation cannot only be the end of an occupation of an occupying government structure, but it also must be the end of the occupation of the presence of troops in Iraq, because that is seen by the people of Iraq as the essence of the occupation. Is war inevitable? No. Is peace inevitable? If we're willing to work for it. As a candidate for president, I not only am challenging the underlying assumptions of our presence in Iraq, But I'm challenging the underlying assumptions of America's projection of power in the world. That we're at a new era in our world. That this is an era where we can catch the advancing tide of human unity. Instead of separating ourselves from the world community, this is the moment that the world is waiting for the United States to take steps in the direction of affirming cooperation internationally. And as the next President of the United States, I would take those directions with specific measure, and that is to affirm the covenants of the Non-Proliferation Treaty and to commit the United States once again to the cause of abolishing all nuclear weapons. We must lead the way. We must lead the way instead of deferring to a nuclear posture review which calls for building new nuclear weapons. We have no credibility in the world in telling non-nuclear nations they should not build nuclear weapons when we're building new nuclear weapons. We have no credibility in the world in telling nuclear states that they should not test or develop new nuclear weapons when we're developing new nuclear weapons. The only credibility we have as a nation is to take up the offer that we were offered a few years ago by Vladimir Putin of Russia to begin to build down and eventually eliminate nuclear arsenals. Instead, this administration canceled the ABM treaty. We must resurrect that treaty. We must resurrect the Non-Proliferation Treaty. As President of the United States, I intend to move expeditiously to confirm America's role of cooperation in the world by signing the Biological Weapons Convention, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Small Arms Treaty, the Landmine Treaty, join the International Criminal Court, affirm principles of equal justice before the law internationally, sign the Kyoto Climate Change Treaty. It is time for the United States to rejoin the world. It is time for the United States to take steps that connect us with the community of nations. It is time for the United States to understand that we are in a new world where the security of this country will depend not so much that we're preparing for war against nation states, but that we're in a new period in human history where non-state actors present a threat to the security of many nations and the world, and it is only through international cooperation that we can hope to achieve any measure of security here at home. It's time for new thinking. It's time for a new approach. It's time to take an approach which comprehends that this world is so interconnected and so interdependent that it is only a type of thinking which separates us from unity. It's a type of thinking, of compartmentalized thinking, of us versus them, which locks us into conflict and which is a precursor to war. The vision I bring is one of an holistic thinking, which sees the world as one and which acts upon that to reinforce the idea of the possibility of cooperation with the people of the world. All over this world, people are waiting for the United States to take a new direction, the United States to find a way to use its resources to create and quicken this sense of this advancing tide of human unity. War is not inevitable. Peace is inevitable. But it comes down to the work of our own hands and our own hearts and the power of the human spirit. It comes from our understanding of our ability to change things, from the understanding that we're not doomed, from the understanding that human evolution requires us not only to comprehend the power that we have to change things, but to put that in motion. Evolutionary biologists can talk about the track of a trajectory of evolution, and will note that there's a point at which there is a break and suddenly an upward spiral. They don't know how it happens, but they know it happens. And I say that we are at the same moment in time with respect to our social relations, with respect to our human relations, that we're at the moment of a leap, of an evolutionary spiral, where we can create a new world, a world where we can work with the community of nations, a world where we can address the issues of poverty, address the issues of ill health, address the issues of lack of adequate education. But we have to do it by refocusing our attention to doing things that affirm and sustain this world. War is not inevitable. Peace is inevitable. If we're willing to work and to create structures of international cooperation which affirm the possibilities of peace. My candidacy is about raising those fundamental questions. It's about rallying the American people in a direction that insists that we can do better, that it's our responsibility, and that we have the ability to create a new world. The poet Tennyson said, "Come, my friends, come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world." Thank you.